Did you go to an Islamic school until you were in high school?
I went to an Islamic school up until the 10th grade. Then I went to it was like a trade school almost. It specialized like in engineering and architecture.
And there you had both men and women.
Yeah.
Tell me that about that transition.
Yeah, so, for me, that transition wasn't too difficult because both of my parents are converts. So I have, like, half of my family is now Muslim. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I interacted a lot of times with the opposite gender. And my dad used to always tell me, you need to be able to prepare your kids to operate in the type of world we live in. Like back during the Prophet ﷺ's time, you know what I'm saying? It was a different world. And we live in a completely different world from that, and you need to be able to prepare the youth for, how to handle that. But, as I moved on with, my music, I started adapting, I guess, worldly qualities to it as well. And as an artist, I just find that you have to express yourself to the most sincerest and truest way that you are. So I had a project called the Flawed Muslim Project, and I always kind of reiterate that we're all flawed Muslims, and I don't want kids to ever think, oh, I sinned, so God's never gonna forgive me, so why shouldn't I just stop? I want to let everyone know that everybody has their lows. You could be at the top of your game, praying every salat every day for like a year straight, and then something happens and now you're missing your prayers. You shouldn't give up, because at a certain point you were back there. We're all the same. No one's holier than the other. You know what I mean?
That's crazy that you say that, because I'm actually at that point in my life right now. Before this, I haven't really prayed much in my life, except probably Friday prayers. But in the last year and a half, I've been praying almost basically every day. I've been pretty good at it. And I haven't even been missing Fajr, and I hear a lot of Muslims that pray consistently throughout their life, miss Fajr in general. So I was pretty proud of myself. It's been a year and a half. I'm like, let's go. And then suddenly, last week or something, I just started missing prayers. I've just started missing Fajr. It's crazy that you say that. And I literally, I texted my friend the other day, and I was like, yo, I'm missing prayers. I'm messing up. I'm not even thinking about God anymore. It's as if one day I just woke up and I wasn't Muslim anymore. And I told myself, and I told him, I'm like, listen, it's like the gym. I'm not giving up. I'm going to keep trying one prayer at a time at least. I'm going to keep crawling and scratching back.
I really think for me, I always, when I was younger, I was a little more judgy. You know what I mean? I think I think at a certain point when I was doing those, doing strictly nasheeds and things like that, I was even closer to the deen in terms of how much time I put into, my worship and, my learning of the deen. And now, as you get older, it gets harder. You have a job, and then, you have a family, and now you have less time to do things. But I think back then, I did think I was spiritually in a better place than some people, maybe somebody who did this or did that. And looking back, that wasn't even never the case, because at a certain point, I could have been at my lowest, and they could have been right at their top. And, I always tell people that no matter what, someone sinned, you don't know their conversation with God, between them and Allah. You don't know what that type of conversation looks like. And we really, the best of Muslims, in my opinion, mind their business, keep to yourself, focus on you. Because most of the time when you reflect, oh, you're sinning and stuff, it's usually because you're trying to distract yourself from your own faults, and you should really focus on those.
Yeah, 100%. And there was this one friend of the Prophet, peace be upon him, who said that whenever he wanted to really fast, and then once he had to make it haram on himself to fast for 6 to 9 months, and it was because he had a thought where he judged someone. He didn't even say it out loud. He just thought about it, and he was like, okay, I'm making on myself haram for this period of time. I'm not sure if it was 6 months or not, where I'm not even going to be allowed to do the worship that I enjoy to do, because it's such a big deal. And when I first started off praying and doing stuff like that, I started getting a little what you're saying and judgy a little bit. And hey, how come you're not doing this? Hey, how come you're not doing that? Get to it, stuff like that. And then I fell off a little bit, and then I came back and I was like, oh, look at me though, look at you. And I learned that lesson real quick.
I think that's just God humbling us. You know what I mean? Like when arrogance is a scary thing. In my opinion, it stems from insecurity. Yeah. And if you're insecure about yourself, of course you're going to try to make yourself look better, feel better. You're going to tell yourself, I'm better than everybody. And fighting those insecurities is probably something you're going to do for the rest of your life. And you just got to be able to do that. And God helps by really humbling you. Like, he'll put you at the top. He might give you all the money in the world, but he'll make you unhappy. And then it's kind of like, now you have a different struggle. Now it wasn't really about getting the money anymore than what it is about. What makes me happy?
Getting my family back. Oh, well, you've lost your family in pursuit of money. Yeah.
When I was going to school for architecture, I interned with the head architect of Reagan National Airport, right? And we're walking around, and he said, this is a Rolex. He was telling me about everything he has. He's like, I make this much. And he's like, but you know what? A lot of people don't know what it takes to be the head of an airport as in architecture. He's like, you can't have a family. He's like, he focuses so much on work, spends all his time working. He can't make a family. Or a lot of architects, they'll say they had a wife. They don't have a wife no more because they had to choose their work or their wife, And, that's a real thing in life.
And I don't even want to work that hard. Like, I would rather...
Just be content.
Yeah, I would rather have family and wife and kids than lose everything and have money and fame and stuff like that. And let's go back to your family being converts. Why did they choose Islam? What's kind of their story?
I think my dad, he's a guy who loves to read. He's really deep into learning. And I think when Islam, came upon him, someone brought it to him that he felt like this was the truth, and he loved it, and he got into it, and he actually went to, because my grandmother was super religious as a Christian. Like, she would wake up, actually, how we wake up for Fajr, she wake up 5 a.m. to read the Bible. So she was very dedicated. So he actually went to his church and he told his pastor that, I'm converting. And the pastor said, well, if you ever need anything, you can call me, and you're still family, So he was able to navigate. And then my mom, shortly, came right after him. And they ended up, becoming Muslim. And then they had me. And I think growing up with them as converts was a beautiful thing, because I think converts honestly do take worship a little more seriously than us born Muslims who always had Islam. You take something for granted if you never didn't have it. So I think, I'm grateful that they did. And then watching people like my uncle or my grandmother, she paid for my private school, Al-Huda, she paid for that. They helped pay for his Hajj.
And they were Christian.
They paid for him to go to Hajj.
Very cool.
So, like, very supportive. It showed me that, no matter what religion you are, you can coexist. You can be together. You can still be family. You got to really get past some of those differences that we often put on the table.
Yeah, and it's very cool, and it promotes unity, especially hearing these kind of stories, because even when I post these kind of videos on YouTube, sometimes you'll see like Christians commenting versus Muslims commenting and all that kind of stuff. It's like, you guys can just like each other, love each other, even in scenarios like you don't even have to do all that. Yeah, you don't have to even do that. And you mentioned how your parents taught you from a young age to raise your kids being able to live in the reality of the world, not only that you lived in, but what they're going to live in, right? How did your parents teach you that? And or what did they say to you that said, like, hey, listen, this is how you raise your kids to be able to deal with their future?
So I think it was very subliminal. I feel like looking back, I thought I could do anything I wanted. And that's really because they created the idea in my head. Like, it was almost like they would let me do anything. They gave me all this trust. I didn't want to break their trust. I think because they also had to operate around non-Muslims, because they were once not Muslim themselves, and I was around them, interacting with them, and I saw the unity. They always taught me that you shouldn't. This whole bubble idea is like dangerous. I know kids who were super religious, like at 17, 18, and they're doing a lot of other things right now, and they don't know how they got to that point. But I know that it's almost like a culture shock for a Muslim boy who's never talked to a woman outside of his family to, get dropped off halfway in the campus, and the campus is filled with girls that, might be wearing shorts, might be, there is a culture shock for them. Like, how are they supposed to handle that if you don't at least sit down and talk to them? But I think it's also communication. I think growing up, I realized that some of my friends didn't have the same type of communication with their parents that I did. I was able to talk to my parents about everything. I wasn't afraid to tell them anything about how I felt, about if I wanted to talk to somebody, about if I was who I was friends with. They knew everybody, whether it was a man or a woman. You know what I mean? So it kind of raised me to say, I have to do that for my child. For me, it's kind of like, since I'm a father now, it's almost like, okay, I was raised a certain way, but my child definitely won't be able to be raised the exact same way as me, because it's going to be a different place in the world. Like, even look at the internet, like we have the internet right now, but when I was young, we had just got the internet. But some of these kids, like my nephew, he's able to, at 2 years old, watch a YouTube video with a kid telling him about a new toy, and I watched him go to Amazon, and he found the toy, and then he put it in the checkout bag on the iPad, and then my mom was like, he bought it. Like, he bought it. Like, I'm like, he's 2. He's 2. When he was 2, and I'm like, I don't know if I should be upset or impressed at this, that a 2-year-old was able to even do this. And I'm like, yo, that's crazy, because if you said a 2-year-old could do something like that 20 years ago, they'd look at you like you were crazy.
Yeah.
But now it's normal.
My niece who's only like 8 months old, she has learned how to scroll with her thumb on her phone. She's 8 months. She learned how to scroll on her phone before she learned how to crawl. And I'm serious. That's how insane it's gotten. And I agree with you, man, because growing up, I have never even known that it was to a point where I only heard about sex and sexually driven things or things like that outside of the home, or on TV. It was to a point where I genuinely thought for a while there that Muslims didn't have sex. So my parents never.
I think everyone had that.
Everyone
when they were a kid.
Everyone, they were like, "Wow, all these people are having sex," but my parents and everyone's parents that are Muslim not having sex.
Kids I knew didn't even know how babies were created. They
Wow.
were like, I don't know.
Muslims?
Yeah. Like,
wow.
And their parents never had the conversation with them.
Yeah, and that private school that you and I went to never had that health class. And I would go to health class and I would learn about my body and what sex is and what women's bodies are.
I think it's also like, the immigrant parent, when you look at it, it's kind of like, they grew up in a different place. You know? It was a completely different place, and you honor them because they really did move to a whole completely different place to give you a better life. You know what I mean? And I mean, that's beautiful, and there's no way you can't blame them for not being able to figure out this society.
Oh no, I don't blame them at all. Yeah. But it does go to some of the problems, because kids that are younger than us are going to be listening to this and wondering why haven't their parents said anything, and so that's more like, to them, it's kind of like your parents are probably just too shy, too nervous to say it.
But it was funny because because in the 7th grade I went to middle school, public middle school, right? And once I was at a table, and this kid just pulled up to the table and just explained the birds and the bees. Like straight up. Just explained it in the most simplistic way. It wasn't even wrong. It wasn't even dirty. It was like why? I was confused. I was eating, and he just yeah, guys. So this happened. I was like, oh, I guess that's how that happens. Okay, but my parents before that, I was like, I already know, and I think it was also with the internet. I was like, well, I mean, I could just Google, what's sex, and I used to be that type of kid that just Google anything. I'd be like, Google, what's this? Sometimes that got me in trouble, but
no, but okay, I'll tell you this, right? Like, just so you can understand my point of view a little bit more. Yeah. Like, when my sisters, for example, wouldn't pray when I was younger, I was kind of confused, to a point where I was kind of pissed. Why am I having to pray and I want to play, and they don't have to pray and get to play, right? And my dad would be like, shh. Just don't ask. And so until it came to a point where months later, face was red. I was like, you got to tell me right now why they aren't playing. And he finally took me aside and he was like, they have periods. It was just like, dude, why don't you say that? I learned that in 5th grade. Like, why don't you tell me that that's... So it's to a point where it's almost, Voldemort, we were just talking about it. Sex, drugs, girls, alcohol is Voldemort. They that shall not be named in Muslim households, at least immigrant Muslim households in America. That's an issue. If there's an immigrant Muslim parent that's watching, or if there's an immigrant first generation child that's watching, that's an issue. That needs to be something to be able to be communicated with. It's just stuff like these stuff that are considered uncomfortable even for some Americans that are non-Muslim. You still gotta have them. You kind of get what I'm saying? Like yeah. It's the vibe that you get at a mosque. It's the same thing at home. Like, do not speak.
It's like I'm in trouble.
Yes.
I better not say a word. But I mean, it's difficult because I'm pretty sure that those things didn't need to be discussed in some of these countries. Mm. It didn't necessarily need to be discussed. Yeah, a lot of daughters probably got introduced, and maybe their mother took them aside and told them right before they got married, what this is and what that is, and then they probably told the son already. The father told the son, and they did it at that point. They didn't tell them about sex until they were ready to get married, which it makes sense. Except that we live in an overly sexualized society right now.
Right. And just because we brought up the negative, let's bring up the positive. I think our Muslim generation, ours, is going to do a very good job of raising their kids. I think Muslims of our age, the millennial Muslim Americans, are very, very caring, very understanding of mental health and emotional health and body issues and all these things. And I'm hopeful for our future. I think our future is bright as Muslim Americans and Muslims in the West. There's this guy in the Middle East that said to my brother-in-law the other day, it is Muslim Americans and it's Western Muslims that are going to come back to the Middle East and teach Middle Eastern Muslims how to be Muslim. Like, I think Western Muslims are the future, and I think we're gonna raise our kids great.
I think it's because we got through some very corrupting times. Like, every time you turn on TV, you're gonna see. Every time you scroll on Instagram, you're gonna see something that you shouldn't see. And do you keep scrolling, or do you get caught up in that? And I think we've kind of gotten used to navigating through this society where those things that are happening in those other societies that are like under the wraps and no one's talking about, like,
we had to deal with them. We didn't have a choice. We didn't have a choice. We had to answer, and we have to answer questions like the gay question, questions like the alcohol question, the weed question, all these questions that in predominantly Muslim countries you can easily avoid because the culture forces you not to be able to speak on it. This society and culture is saying not only speak on it, you could be it, you could do it, and we'll support you. So us as Muslims have had to be able to go, well, where do I stand? Where do I go? And I think we've led the way, and I think we're doing a good job with it.
I think we are. Yeah, I definitely think we have a long road to go, but, at the end of the day, I think from what I'm seeing, at least, I think people are figuring out. You know, there's always going to be people who ain't going to figure it out, and that's their battle. You know, with their own nafs. You know, at the end of the day, so that's just what it is.